And on that point, Charlie, if I can jump in, um, the Williston town staff have been doing quite a bit of work on housing policy as a component of land use policy. So absolutely encourage the housing committee to be involved in that going forward. But in terms of priorities, I think that following that work is probably sufficient for now. And I think I don't want to speak for Melinda or Matt, but I think there's, uh, you know, they will keep you involved in that. I would expect.
Yeah, and also, uh, what a sort of a timely task related to housing policy as a component of land use policy is the upcoming town plan rewrite. And so I think I would expect that, I mean, I think, so staff has discussed like how we're going to draft the chapters for the next town plan. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to, for all chapters, where a committee, where the subject matter is relevant to a committee or department, we'd like to bring drafts, we'd like to, solicit your input and ideas for like overall vision and long-term goals, and then draft a chapter, bring it to you for review and suggestions, so we'd like to involve the committees in that long-term planning. So that would be, that would be what's relevant at this point in that task.
Did any of you get a chance as you went through the material that we got to read through the South Burlington report? And you noticed how when they started looking at housing, that a lot of the land that they thought would be available for housing wasn't. When they looked at the ratio of land that was available to the land that was already conserved, they found that there was 10 times as much land conserved as what was available for housing. So I think that can be an important part of what we look at as we go through this.
Mhm.
Develop an annual work plan in coordination with the planning commission and planning director. And I think that's what we need to leave here with tonight, is that annual work plan. Assist in periodic housing needs assessments. And that ties back. It seems to me that we need to hear of that assessment before we really can come up with a good strategy.
Well, and one was just completed, right? So there wouldn't be another one for.
Yeah, so, right, so, I would lean on the assessment that we just did, and then, after a period of maybe 5 years, maybe revisit it and, kind of re-up it, redo it. And then at that point, it'll be, sort of before the drafting of the next town plan. So it'll hopefully inform, like this housing assessment that was just completed will inform this upcoming plan, and then the next one will inform the next plan, et cetera.
We're gonna have this all solved by 5 years.
It's great.
You won't have a job in 5 years.
That'd be great.
Develop and implement community engagement and outreach opportunities related to housing issues. I don't see any way that we could come close to doing as good a job as the planning commission did with their community engagement work. How many people did you finally get to come out to those?
Well, for all of that work, it was, I don't know, maybe 120 or so, including the online. It felt like a lot more.
Yeah,
But-
I was surprised when I saw the number.
Yeah,
I thought it was more than that, but it still seems small.
yeah, so anyway, but it was deep engagement.
It was.
I guess, so, yeah.
And develop partnerships with developers, nonprofit, state agencies, and social service agencies, organizations to advance the community housing goals. And this seems to me that if we can really bring together those groups of people, if we could be a a vehicle for tying those organizations together, we could have a major impact on affordable housing.
Absolutely.
That might be a dream.
Well, it's a good dream to have. I mean, it's, yeah, it's an aspirational, it's a
Yes.
goal. So,
Yeah, we want them to at least think of Williston when they're trying to solve regional issues. So.
Yeah.
yeah.
So saying, yeah, you'll have town support, I think is important.
So then, Melissa has put together a suggested framework for work plan development.
It's a little bigger, yeah, so I did get some suggestions, from members. And so, and basically I like gathered up those suggestions, put them in a list and kind of did a little bit of organizing, tried to organize them. And I kind of see two different things, two different areas. Information, getting up to speed, which probably happens at the front end, and then actually getting stuff done, which, you know, probably happens a little bit later, but can happen in tandem. But I think the probably makes sense, the first thing to kind of get up to speed a little bit on just stuff happening in Williston, and in the region, and how, you know, just sort of the landscape of different housing committees in the region, what they're doing, kind of thing, and anything else that you might want or need to know about. And then some of the questions or the suggestions that I got was, you know, kind of a question about the cost of housing development, and how much of that is under the municipality's control. What can you do about it, kind of thing. And I think that there's probably people that can speak to that. There is this pretty neat, inclusionary housing calculator. I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at it, but I've kind of messed around with it. It's not like absolutely, it's not like perfect and accurate, but it gives you a nice idea of like, what are the levers and how much difference does it make to tweak one thing versus another.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's a fun tool to play with and mess with. And then people to bring in. There's some local developers who could probably tell us a lot about housing costs. I mentioned Seth Leonard because, I took a look at some, you know, just the slides from a presentation that he gave to another housing committee. And there was a lot of information about, what affects the cost of housing. So I thought that was really interesting. And then Darren, you might have other ideas about people we could bring in to address that topic, or, I don't know.
Sure, yeah. You mean right now, or?
No, just, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned there might be an opportunity to, coordinate, like a possible talk with Seth Leonard, but maybe we can speak offline about that.
Let's go through the list and then come back to the top of the list and
Yeah.
talk about what of these things we want to do.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, number 2, conducting a more detailed assessment, of housing needs for less than 50%, area median income households. And what's the target number of homes to achieve that healthy jobs to homes index for that income level. 3, identify parcels with potential for development or redevelopment. Are there any parcels of municipal land suitable for housing development in Williston? Doing a report, making a map of suitable parcels. Establish targets for the number of homes or portion of housing stock affordable to low and moderate income households. And I believe that CCRPC is gonna be doing some of this work. I don't know what the timeline is, and maybe Darren, maybe you can chime in about a little bit about the Housing Navigators program.
Yeah, do you want me to do that now or wait until we get to that on the agenda? I guess it's about
Let's
that
come
time.
back to Darren.
We'll come back to it, sorry. Like, and then invite members of neighboring housing committees as guest speakers to see what's worked for them and what hasn't worked. Yeah, and then so that's like gathering information. And then the project and program implementation. There's the items on the housing committee charge that we just went over. Conducting, and one of those was conducting outreach. There's maybe some outreach that could be done to inform the drafting of the new town plan housing chapter. But some outreach, some sort of like more general outreach has been done, through the engagement events, and survey that's out there. There may be other ways of getting public input. Drafting the new town plan housing chapter. Reviewing the existing chapter, making recommendations as to what needs to be changed or added to the new plan. Researching other communities' housing trust funds and using them as framework to develop a more robust policy for Williston's housing trust fund. What what the funds are gonna be used for and some kind of process to award those funds. And then promoting accessory dwelling units. So that's kind of like, that's sort of a rough list of possible things that this committee can take on, and certainly not gonna take on all of those in the next year, but I think, if you can sort of go through and prioritize, like what's the first step, what's the second step?
When is the town plan supposed to be completed?
What was that?
When is the new town plan supposed to be?
So that plan needs to be adopted by August of 2025.
Okay.
And, so our sort of rough timeline for getting chapters drafted and getting them in front of the planning commission is we'd like to start having the planning commission look at chapters like late next summer, so and then probably having the select board start to look at it early in 2025, like right off the bat.
So we should have all our input by the end of summer.
Yeah,
So
so
that should be kind of a high priority.
And I'll jump in right now and say that CCRPC, as part of our work, will provide like an initial review of the Williston Town Plan that will include some suggestions and things to cover or changes to make. We're actually working on that right now. I'm the point person, so you'll get that hopefully by the end of the year, but no later than February. And it'll include some information about housing, and we're trying to keep it general, knowing that our understanding from the town staff is that this is going to be a fairly big overhaul of the town plan. So we're not going to get into like grammatical specifics, but more just broad topic themes of, make sure to mention S100, the Act 47 Home Act provisions and how those affect Williston, stuff like that. So that could provide a nice framework for the committee to sort of look into what that, look to dig into that work and get you started pretty soon.
Well, I remember as we each introduced ourselves that Debbie commented that it was important that whatever we did be driven by data. So much of this first section is is collecting data. Is there a sequence that seems logical to people? Where do we begin?
Well, it says that the 2 to 4 are gonna be covered by mostly the RPC, right? So do we need to do more in that, or?
Maybe, Darren, if you could maybe chime in about like what the Regional Planning Commission is gonna be doing related to housing and when you think that work might happen.
Yes, I think this is a good time to talk about that. Thanks, Melinda and everyone. So numbers 2 and 4 are definitely more technical data oriented, getting the target number of housing units and specifically affordable housing units or low and moderate income, the terminology varies. And then that specific assessment of, deeply affordable housing. All of that is going to be part of the forthcoming statewide housing needs assessment, which is currently in drafting and process, and that's being done by VHFA. So they're going to be presenting that draft in the spring. In the meantime, regional planning commissions are also, specifically CCRPC, are going to develop housing targets once the state assessment comes out, but we're already thinking about how to sort of translate that into regional targets as well as municipal targets, because that's a requirement of the Home Act, is not only to identify here's the current state of housing in our community and the sort of the general needs, but also the specifics of how much more housing we may need to create in order to meet those needs and translate that into policies in regional and municipal plans. So that work will be happening basically this spring into summer, this coming spring into summer. We're working on an update to the regional plan, the ECOS plan. We're also hoping to have that done in 2025. We've pushed it back a little bit in order to accommodate this additional housing work, as well as some more outreach work. So we'll be in conversation with all the towns, including Williston, about these housing targets and the housing data. Again, probably summer-ish 2024. So this coming summer. And then a parallel program that we're working on right now, which was also funded through a legislative act last year, is this Housing Navigators program. And is essentially money given to the RPCs to advance development of housing throughout the state. Each RPC is doing it a little differently. For instance, Addison County is really promoting ADUs and helping folks kind of walk through the technical process of building an ADU. And I can't remember what Central Vermont is doing, but it's even different from what we are doing, which is more of a analysis of housing developed parcels that are prime for housing development, and looking at this countywide analysis of where can we build more housing and what are the sort of ideal places based on zoning and infrastructure capacity and other constraints. And then from that, we're going to pick a few and partner with the municipality to sort of bring housing projects into the development process, ideally with the housing nonprofit, although it could be a private developer too. And so that will, because it's a fairly small amount of money that we have to do it with, it's really only going to be a few parcels in maybe 1 or 2 towns, but Williston is on our short list for folks to work with, since you have an active housing committee now and you're really interested in digging into this work. So we'll be in touch about that. We're currently starting the GIS analysis, and we'll be presenting a list of parcels once that's done, and then we'll go from there to figure out next steps.
So
And
just,
hopefully replicate that in the future with more funding.
just to clarify, you're gonna look at parcels countywide and sort of, okay, so we would get some information irrespective of whether we're chosen as a partner for this very specific thing, sort of the second step, but the first step is to map things, right? Am I hearing you right?
Yes, that's correct. And we probably will have a list of, sort of all the parcels in all the towns, and then sort of a short list in each of them to say, we think these are probably the most developable for housing. And again, we're not trying to sort of, you know, we're trying to make sure that we're giving resources to everybody to make this happen. But with our limited funds, we can only take the next step with a couple at the start.
Will you end up with a map that looks like the South Burlington map of all of their town and what potentially was buildable and what isn't for the various reasons?
I'm not, it might look like that. It might also just be a list of parcels. It'll probably have a map element too. Melanie Needle, one of our GIS and planning folks, is doing most of that work. So we'll leave it up to her to see how it plays out. But yeah, it'll look something like that, I think.
And also like, I could assist, I mean, if CCRPC doesn't have enough funding to like produce a map and that's something that you think would be helpful, I could probably just take the list and produce that map.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be in touch with all the planners to sort of ground truth some of those maps and lists as well and say, you know, did we miss anything here? We're also going to be working with housing developers and nonprofits to sort of figure out from their end what is feasible versus what seems just good on paper.
That sounds like number 3 is pretty well in process with the Regional Planning Commission. That we just need to wait till summer to see.
Yeah, no, 2 through 4, sounds like the professionals are dug in pretty well, so that's good to hear.
I didn't hear anything about targets for percentage or numbers of housing units for low to moderate income households.
That will be part of the statewide housing needs assessment and the regional and local targets. We haven't quite gotten through all the details of what it'll look like. It might just be, I think it will have to include total number as well as this, you know, affordable or, you know, income stratified picture. We don't know exactly how we're going to get there yet. That's the trick, is the state said, hey, go do this. And we're trying to figure out how to make it happen. But it does need to happen. We've been doing this for a while. Something that we'll probably be using as a framework is the Building Homes Together campaign, which, you know, I think, you know, Chittenden County has done. And I think that's this, you know, regional housing targets legislation was a little bit based on that, perhaps. So what that campaign said was we need to build, originally it was, I want to say 2,500 homes in 5 years, of which a quarter are affordable. We've upped that now to 5,000 for the next 5 years. Again, a quarter of which need to be affordable, so 1,250, and that's countywide. And we met our total target for the first few years of the campaign, but not the affordable housing target. We're still a little behind on the first couple years of the second 5-year campaign on total as well as affordable units.
And how did you define affordable?
I will have to check the details. I would believe it's 80% or less of the area median income. It might have been 100, and it might be based on the state definition, which is also differentiates between home ownership and rental.
Yeah, I think it might have been 80% for rentals and 100 for owner occupied.
Yeah, it might be up to 120% for owner occupied now.
Okay.
Is that based on the county-wide average income or median income, or on the statewide?
It would be based on the county.
That's pretty high number to call affordable.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a moving target at this point. You know, things seem to keep pushing up and up. And the other thing that, you know, factors into all of this is, you know, the cost of housing as a portion of a household's income seems to be increasing because of the cost of housing and the demand. And transportation is part of, you know, our household expenses too. So everything's getting squeezed. So we're trying to take all of that into account through the regional housing targets methodology as well. Regional and municipal, we're accounting for transportation expenses in that.
What was number 2 on the list?
conducted more detailed assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is all really brilliant for us, except that we are charged to look at 50% of AMI, so. If the data doesn't have the breakout, or 50% or less, I should say.
I don't think that was a charge. I think that that was one of the members
Yeah,
asked for
that
that.
was a suggestion.
You're right, we just read the charge. Okay, good point.
I mean, we could probably come up with kind of a rough ballpark,
Right.
target for that by looking at, going into the housing needs assessment data. And, that's something, I mean, I could probably come up
That
with
was in there.
like a range or something like that. And
Yeah.
without spending a huge amount of time on it, yeah.
And I would say, as important as it is, I don't know that it's worth spending a lot of time trying to come up with numbers around that, because I can tell you that the amount of housing you're going to be able to build at that income level is going to fall short of what is needed. So no matter what it is, how much you can do, there will always be a need for more, realistically. So hopefully we'll get a better picture of that through the statewide housing needs assessment and the regional work that we're going to do. And again, you have the local housing needs assessment as well. But I think I would encourage the committee to focus on that sort of partnership of how to make that type of housing come to fruition and come into reality, because that's the hard work. And anything for that income level is going to require public subsidy and public investment or nonprofit investment.
That's roughly $25 an hour for a single worker working 8 hours a day.
So the partnership was down there somewhere, right?
And that was in
Part of the
the
charge.
second page, yeah,
Are we gonna pass over 5 because we can join?
Yeah, I wondered whether asking someone from South Burlington or Heinsberg to come in and describe their process might be really a really meaningful way to get started with.
Well, you've done a lot of affordable housing stuff, right?
Yeah, certainly.
So you have a lot of experience. I was kind of wondering if you had.
I think there's definitely, something I didn't have it for this meeting, but can put together on some of the projects I thought had worked out, and, say Eugene, Oregon, which has some similarities, and certainly, in Florida, some projects that, we've worked on. Interesting enough, in Eugene, we had worked on projects, when we started the housing, trust fund committee, where we became bridge money to complete projects. We were able to complete a lot of small projects in the beginning. And my understanding now is that trust fund has risen to over $1 million a year, that they're able to put back into the community. And I'd have to go back and look, because I know there were certain ways, certain things that the city did to increase the amount of money that would go into the trust fund. That may be something for us to look at as well.
yeah, and I assume that cadence, so in terms of the town budget, I mean, obviously it's coming out right now. So what I think part of our calendar has to look at for next year's budget, when we have to start chiming in on that.
For next year's budget.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
obviously we
pretty
mentioned-
much like all, I think at the next select board meeting, the town manager has a draft
Mhm.
operating budget, and he's gonna present it next. Or did he
Usually
already,
January,
I
yeah.
think he already presented it
Yeah.
last night.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I know, sorry, when I say
Yeah.
next year, I mean
The
25.
fall,
Yeah.
fall. So
Yeah.
that would be, starting in September is when the town is working on budgets.
Okay, so September is when we have to defer.
The policy that, as I understand it, the town passed as part of the newest development required that 15% of the homes be affordable at 100% of the median income, or 10% at 80%. And if they didn't meet that, there was there was a penalty.
Payment in lieu.
Payment.
We may want to look at that penalty and see if it really is enough to make a difference.
Exactly, right.
There's
Yeah.
a-
Well,
wasn't
that was
clear
just
to me,
passed
though.
though, can we change it?
Well, only through a bylaw amendment, and I think it would be worth monitoring that for a while, because there are, although, of course, we want more money for the housing trust fund.
On houses too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you wanna,
You don't want to depend on the penalty,
right, and it's
Right.
also,
counterproductive to get the penalty, really.
it's a tricky thing, the payment in lieu, and if you make it too high, then there's a risk that you, may get certain projects that, that could have happened, but they can't, for some reason, can't do affordable homes, and they can't, afford the payment in lieu, so they just don't happen. And that, I think there was a study of, Burlington's, inclusionary zoning, which they've had, they're probably the longest, at least they've had the longest standing program in the state. And there was a study done, and it's sort of the conclusion, one of the conclusions they came to is that their payment in lieu is set too high. And so, it may have been the inclusionary zoning as a result may have been suppressing housing production, even though it was largely successful in integrating affordable homes, within developments in town. It may have, had a suppressing effect overall. I don't know.
Yeah, so
Scott,
that's
you
why.
probably know more about
your
it.
bridge,
Yeah, definitely, that is
Yeah.
something I've heard as well, coming out of some of the housing meetings up there.
Yeah.
that might be why the bridge thing. The bridge money would help.
I think so. I think that's, especially in the beginning, there's always some need for developers and in certain cases, they need to. The project works better or looks better on paper if there is multiple organizations and agencies contributing, and then we can be that. We can be that part that gets the bridge funding to get the project moving forward. So I think there's a real opportunity
That
there.
could be a use.
Yeah.
I'll just say though, that the fees do add up. So at the DRB, we had a review of the Glazer property under 3 different scenarios.
Yeah.
And those
Right.
fees were getting to be $1 million. So, if
Yeah.
they didn't comply, they were in, like, I'm not saying that they're not, that hasn't been decided which of those ways it would go, but the math was in the DRB packet about if they decided not to be inclusionary. So it
Right,
added up fast.
yeah.
Well, I'd say it'd be great if you could present sort of an overview.
Yeah, I could do that.
What was that?
That he would present, sort of, instead of getting somebody from Jericho or whatever, that he would present.
Well, I think I'd be happy to present something, but I'd really like to learn as well as what local people are doing. I think that'd be important.
Mhm.
And one other resource, if I can jump in again, that's not on this list, but I would highly recommend is that CCRPC hosts housing convenings about once or twice a year. And a lot of all the information from previous convenings is on our website, including the presentation materials, the minutes. And the first one that we ever did was a Economics of Housing Summit. It was in 2018, but I think a lot of the concepts and themes are still relevant. So I definitely encourage you to look through that page. It's on if you go to our website, it's under our work and then housing, and you'll see it right there.
Mhm.
Well, and there are also these monthly drop-in meetings now, right? So I met several people from different towns when I went to the one last month.
Yes, and those are statewide sort of versions of our housing convening just in Chittenden County. So yes, I'd encourage you to go to both if you can.
And then it may be hard for some members to attend these outside meetings, but it may also be, there's also the resources on the shared drive where I think the Essex Committee interviewed a bunch of housing committees, so maybe starting with the resources that are there, and then perhaps at the next meeting if like certain ones really stand out, or if you really, want to invite somebody and really dig a little bit deeper into their work, that would, that'd be good, just like,
We could, know like what they all did first. and then-
yeah.
Did anybody else have trouble getting into the shared drive? I couldn't get into it.
Oh, really? Did it? Hmm.
Charlie, let me know. I know some people do have issues with that depending on, what your setup at home is, but we can work through that for sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
Send me an
Yeah,
email. so I don't forget.
it takes you to Microsoft sign-in page. So
Yeah.
huh.
Yeah.
Hopefully you shouldn't have to do that, but we'll help troubleshoot it.
Let me just
Yeah.
see what happens. I'm just curious. I want to see, yeah, okay, so this is what happens, right? Let's see
Yeah,
what
you're not the only
happens.
folks that that's happened to. So I will
I hate Microsoft.
see if we can.
that's what I gave up.
Okay. Huh. All right.
I have an anti-Microsoft bias, which made it more difficult for me.
I was gonna say, I actually find Microsoft evil, so I had a very bad reaction to that.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could kind of work through the access issues and make sure that folks can, yeah, that would be good.
And Melinda, I don't know if it's easier for you on the town end, if there's an easier way to share resources, we can get
Yeah.
them to you, and then it might be easier to get them to
Sure.
the committee. Yeah.
I mean, I've got access, well, at least I think I can. I think I have to go back to your original email, and then if I click on that, I can get in. And I can just take what's there and maybe, I don't know, throw it into some other sharing platform like a Google, shared drive or something
Yeah.
like that. Might be a little more user friendly, but I will do that. Okay.
So do we want to have some group that has been relatively successful, Jericho or South Burlington or Heinsberg, come in and describe their process to help us get started?
I think it'd be a good idea, yeah.
Do we want to do that at our January meeting?
Yeah, I can, contact, whoever it is, or if there's maybe, we wanna try to bring in a couple of people, I can reach out to them.
So we're gonna invite somebody from Jericho Housing Committee or somebody from one of these other,
I don't know which one is best, because I don't have experience with them.
well, I was just wondering, it says Jericho Housing Committee invited
Oh, they invited guest speakers.
EHFA, Champlain Housing
Right.
Trust and Harvest Cross.
Now, I'm sure that we'll want to hear from those agencies as we go through the year. I'm gonna miss the January meeting, I hope, but
Hmm.
planning to meet my granddaughter in Prague for that week.
Yeah.
Very
Nice.
nice. That's a good.
So Debbie, you'll have to be here.
So just.
Okay.
I mean,
Right,
if
what
we-
day? What's that date? Just so,
First, January 3rd.
that's my birthday.
Oh, no.
Great place to spend your birthday.
Yeah, great.
So if our August meeting is about the town budget, and if, what month, I mean, if we kind of think in terms of having 12 meetings, what meeting would be around the plan?
What's that? What,
Draft a new town plan housing chapter. What month would we need to be thinking about? Because it sounds like we'll get draft material from Darren and stuff.
I would say, probably early in the summer, like maybe
Yeah, because you want to.
June, July.
Yes, so June would be, so June is a town plan housing chapter.
And it's a little bit, yeah, I mean, this is sort of, yeah, it's a good way to kind of think about,
Mhm.
framing the work plan or drafting the work plan. And I actually did, start to draft like a chart, but,
Mhm.
you know, figuring that you'll have a rough idea, a rough timeline at first, and then it'll become more specific, a little bit further in.
Well, you need it by August.
Well,
or the end of
the
August.
town plan expires in August of 2025.
Okay, and you wanna have
And,
a draft by,
the planning commission is gonna start to review chapters next summer, and so, you know, by like late summer, we're gonna, you know, at the latest, we're gonna want them to probably, you know, take a look at the housing.
So then you think that you will have a draft of it from your department, in August, and we could be looking at it in August or September?
Well, so I'm thinking that, like, starting in June, you can have a discussion about sort of, looking at the old plan, discussing, long-range goals, and, you know, throwing out some general ideas. Then July, I come back with a draft. You review the draft and, provide input and suggestions, and then, you know, then maybe August it comes back, or maybe August it goes to planning commission and they provide some input. But that's sort of the rough time frame for that.
But that's about the same time that Darren is going to have a lot of data that he would just love to share with us
Right,
on the whole plan.
yeah, I mean, this is,
well,
you
but
know,
we'll
this,
be able to
this
look at a lot of other things and plug it
Right.
in.
and keep in mind, I mean, this is sort of like roughly sketching it out, and the timeline is definitely subject to change. So we wouldn't worry too much about aligning that with, the CCRPC's work. I mean, their work, you know, we don't really know when it's gonna be done, but, we have sort of an idea, and we can kind of, you know, we can work together on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say, we'll have the numbers for you, we'll have the data and the technical information, but as Melinda said, the themes are not going to change drastically based on that. We know that the numbers are going to say, we need a
Yeah.
lot more housing, we need a lot more affordable housing.
Yeah,
I can tell you that now.
yeah.
So it'll
Yeah,
be more of talking about what other things, what other aspects of the town plan that would push that.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to think about, what policies the town wants to set for achieving those goals of, like, we know we're going to need more housing, looking at how housing interacts with other parts of the town plan and your town policies. One of the things that came up initially as I'm looking at it is the question of, there's a lot of talk about town services and capacity relative to growth management and housing, but I think the conversation can change around that, perhaps, in terms of being less restrictive of housing growth because we're constrained on services, and more thinking about how can we expand services to meet the need for housing, just sort of the tone of the chapter a little bit. And then also thinking about how to meet, the affordability requirement or needs by, adjusting things in other policies that make things not only more affordable to build, but more affordable to live in, energy efficiency, non-car transportation, et cetera, which a lot of that's already in the plan. So it's more going to be reframing than and bubbling those themes up instead of rewriting exactly. So
right, yeah, and you can look at, the existing town plan housing chapter, and you'll get an idea of, like, okay, so these were some of the goals and policies. Are they still relevant? What's gotten done? What's no longer relevant, or, what do you want to do? What do you, does this still make sense? Does this not make sense anymore? Is there something missing? And also looking at, and I did kind of throw up, a link to to the task force report. So kind of maybe taking a look at this report
Yeah,
and,
that was really nicely done.
the other thing I thought would be helpful just in kind of helping you to think about your work plan and kind of, framing not only town plan right up, but just the tasks is we had put together this timeline recently about how the town has addressed housing. Some of these things are hard to read, I know, but basically in 2012, the Housing Task Force worked on this, on goals and visions for housing and created a report. And then that resulted in, they had a number of recommendations in that report, and it resulted in amendments to the bylaw. And then, and also a recommendation to establish a housing trust fund. So this is sort of that timeline. And then, a lot of amendments to the bylaw, including growth management, Taft Corners form-based code, and then in 23, doing the housing needs assessment, passing the housing supported bylaw amendments and establishing the committee. That's sort of a rough outline. And then these were the strategies that were recommended in the Housing Task Force report. And the ones that are
tables
checked off, I mean, the town has really kind of implemented most of these in one fashion or another. Some of them not so much as others. The impact fees have been there is a pathway to reduce or eliminate impact fees for affordable housing.
Mhm.
Right now, it's not the easiest pathway. You have to pay the fees and then request a refund from the select board, which is, but nonetheless.
It is possible.
So it's kind of, it's a good thing to see, that most of these have been addressed in one way or another. There's always more that you can do. But as far as like the regulatory side, it's been worked on a lot. And then, this just shows you, let me see if I can, yeah. The housing from 2013 to 2022, the housing creation. What's I think notable about this table here is Zephyr Place and what a difference a single project can make. So this was a project that CHT created 72 affordable homes. And were it not for that, that 72 homes made such a difference in the overall percentage of affordable homes and related to market rate homes. So it's, made it 13% over a decade, which it's not bad. But if it weren't for that project, it would be more like, less than 10.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, as well as the Hamlet, that was pretty good. So that is a little neighborhood that's sort of just to the northeast of Zephyr. It's like to the,
Yeah,
and it's like Madison,
It's a sort of city crossing area.
yeah, kind of, it's close to Finney. But yeah, anyway, that just gives you an idea. And you can, I encourage you to like, take a look at the report and that'll, give you an idea, like, so what was the housing task force? What were the recommendations back in 2013 and that'll, that can also inform the town plan recommendations. And And then these were some of the recommendations that came out of the housing needs assessment. The regulatory recommendations have, you know, more or less been implemented.
Yeah, you guys did a lot of work.
Including inclusionary zoning and exemptions for low impact projects. And then, yeah, small projects. So there were some density exemptions for low impact projects. And then we didn't do anything with ADUs, so that could be something that could come at some point.
That was, some of that went through with the housing. The state housing. bill.
Yeah, right, so there's S100 and,
Yeah,
you know, you'll want to get someone familiar with, you know, some of those provisions of S100, because it basically will preempt, any local zoning that's more restrictive. And so, you know, this committee, we've, you know, there is a funding source for the next town plan. You may want to think about, well, how should it be funded? You know, is there a mechanism, like, should there be a goal of funding in a certain way? And you can kind of think about that.
yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's our April and May, because it says research other communities, housing trust funds. You know, how and what do they use the funding for, and the process for awarding funds, because we have to understand what our recommendations are around that before we can ask the town for more money.
Sure.
So,
Right.
you know, maybe that's 2 meetings like April, May,
Mhm.
and that's around housing trust funds in general, and then kind of. Maybe one meeting is, learning what everyone else is doing, and the second one is talking about what we would want to do. And that comes straight from our charge,
Sure.
so
Mhm.
that's right in line with that.
Yeah, so. Let's see. Yeah, so basically, so there's the January, February, March meetings.
So we said that January, we would try to hear from other successful committees, what their beginning process was, how they formed, what they did, what their work plan was, and what successes and failures they had with them.
So I can reach out to a few other committees to see if anyone's available. And,
Decide which ones do you think will be most productive for us.
I mean, so Heinsberg Housing Committee's been around for a while, so they might be a good one. Carl Bolin, is that his name?
But Heinsberg, I mean, they have a great plan in place, but it was because they had that very generous donation of like, what, 50 acres or something? So,
Mhm.
I mean, to me, their story is interesting because it took them like 3 years, even with donated land, to get anything going. So that tells you, even if you find land, it's,
Yeah,
I mean, a hard problem.
right.
Church in Underhill is trying to give Habitat or sell Habitat land for, I think, 9 homes,
Mhm.
and it's been 3 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Huh.
I mean, South Burlington is interesting in terms of partnerships, like they got the UVM,
Yeah,
you know, contribution, well, not contribution, but UVM to invest in
Mhm.
affordable housing that was specifically for workforce. So
Mhm.
that's a really different story, but
but
interesting.
that whole, maybe there's a discussion to have with the employers about workplace housing at some point.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
Well, and I was wondering, did we get many people that work here, certainly in the survey or any of those housing group meetings?
Probably not, I would say. So,
10,000 of them.
yeah,
So I wonder if in February we could bring in a builder to talk about what their costs are and ways that costs could be reduced.
mhm.
yeah, that would be super interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear from Green Mountain Habitat as well.
At that same time, bring the builders in
Yeah.
because that's a possibility. I can arrange that. I'm on the Habitat board.
Oh, great.
Well, the three new projects that have come forward? Are they any new contractors to the town?
Williston.
You mean like summer, well, there's Chris Senasak.
No, I mean, the ones that were in the Observer this week. The one in front of TD. The one down by, off Mountain View. I can't remember the other one.
Speaking of which, I mean, we gotta work on the newspaper when the headline says, no one in sight for growth. You're like, that's a little cynical.
Can we not, is there any way, like, that's been sort of in the back of my head. Is there
Yeah.
some way we can do like a
Letter to the editor.
weekly little blurb or just one little column of facts about affordable housing or,
Yeah,
because I feel like there's some, I mean, I am sure we only hear from the people that are crabby about it, but
you
But
mean
they-
like in the Observer?
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, so you get all these people that just say these things there and on the front porch forum.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean.
I love how
And
like,
even just a little fact.
Mhm.
I love how like some people talk about growth, like the new people moving in apparently aren't gonna pay taxes, right? Because they're like, all these people are gonna move in and we're gonna have to build a new school or something. It's like, well,
Mhm.
these
And they
people
don't-
pay
they don't-
taxes.
They don't know things
That's
like that the school numbers have dropped in the last 5 years.
Right.
And that bringing
Yeah.
new people in will keep them at the same.
Right.
I bet that they were putting an addition on Allenbrook School, I assumed it was going up.
No, they're putting in temporary,
Yeah.
but it's not really. If you look at the numbers, it's been going down for like 5-10
I didn't
years.
know that.
So now it's starting.
Yeah, we
to come
have
back
a graph, we can show you the graph that we've been meaning to like put out there, like.
Yeah.
I'd love to put out there that basically shows there's no relationship between, growth of housing and the school population.
yeah.
Like,
Interesting.
the growth of housing, it's sort of like, looks like this. School population has been flat, or just kind of,
Well, the
Yeah.
census was 1.75 people per house or something. So, that's not a lot of kids.
yeah. I mean, yeah, so it has to do with just,
But those are like
changing
little,
demographics.
one graph with 2 paragraphs,
Mhm. Well,
once a month even.
right, I mean, so the Energy Committee, has been writing monthly articles for the Living Green section. They've been doing that for the last almost 2 years. So, and it does take some effort
Yeah.
to do that, but yeah, I mean, you could probably do similar thing, we do like a monthly or,
If you have
Really?
if we decided on a list of little blurbs, I have an editor in my back pocket.
That's good. I have a contact with the Observer.
Oh, good.
Nice.
No,
Well, there's-
my husband is an editor
Mhm.
of Vermont Business Magazine.
Susan,
Yeah.
Susan is in the Rotary Club, so, in fact, she's president of the Rotary Club.
so, let's see,
Well, this. Sorry.
it might be.
Yeah.
I can reach out to Jericho too, to see, because I think, I mean, I looked at, their website, and I think they've done an impressive amount of work, related to outreach, which, could be
That'd be good.
interesting, and is it, I think her name's SJ, or she goes by SJ. I don't know if she's the chair, but she's very enthusiastic and, seems to enjoy talking with meeting with other housing committees, so I could reach out to her.
It is January 3rd, so you might want to think of
Yeah, I know,
more than one.
yeah, it may be hard.
One of the advantages of using one that's not as well established as you describe Heinsberg being,
Mm,
is that they'll have a better memory of what startup was.
Yeah, that's true.
right,
A group that's been active for 10 years has probably forgotten the first 3 years.
yeah. Good idea.
So the other thing that come up here, engage people, and bring in housing stories and talking with local business owners, and I think all of that's. I mean, the stories are useful for the chapter that we would write in the summer, so. Probably pulling in stories is like a spring thing and talking with businesses, if we want to take that on. I mean, we're good.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, and I know Green Mountain Habitat, they do their housing stories and publish them, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, so,
Or.
and I'd love to
CHP.
talk,
Mhm.
right, and locally owned business leaders. I mean, there's some that are very public, you know, in the paper saying, like, what's called On Logic, they've been in the paper going, we can't recruit people and beta, so, you know, I think if we made a list of,
Bunch of them.
I mean, we probably don't want to talk about the national retailers, even though those are our main employers, but like, you know, Home Depot's not gonna
If
talk
they
to
would-
us.
If they would talk to us, they would be wonderful to have.
Yeah.
But that might be the employee, I mean, if we figured out a way, yeah.
Well, I think,
Or some
I mean,
sort
if you guys like this, I'd be happy to kind of pull together a discussion to bring up in January of like where we think we can pull stories in.
Mhm.
And then also what local businesses we want to talk to and what we might want to ask them. I mean, I'm happy to knock on doors.
And we might be able to get the local chamber to help out with that, Chamber of Commerce.
Is there a local
Yeah.
chamber of commerce?
Well, actually, our Rotary Club is, I think, the most engaged around here. But,
There's a county chamber of commerce, but not
Yeah.
more specific.
So,
well, this is
So we're
under the
thinking
conduct outreach is where I'm reading.
so we talked about having, Jericho come in and talk to us about their startup in January, and then we suggested that maybe, bringing in a commercial builder and, a low-cost builder like Habitat, to talk about their costs and how they work them and how they could cooperate with each other. Maybe we could get, a builder that knows that they need to have some affordable housing to enlist someone like Habitat to do the work. And then maybe in March, it'd be worth looking at what the funding sources that are available for housing are, inviting in, Vermont Housing Finance Agency and, CHT to talk about what they do to help with low-cost housing in the area.
Absolutely, love to know them.
Summit Properties is another one that builds mostly affordable.
Who's that?
Summit,
Oh, yeah, Summit, yeah.
and they have not built in Williston.
So there's only one Habitat house in Williston.
Right, but that's, you know, that's where you kind of think of with the changes in bylaws and some of this, would they be able to be, you know, interested? They've done a lot in Winooski.
Yeah.
It's that,
I think what I'm gonna do is I'm
Sure,
gonna
but-
share something else.
Hi, Monica. Monica's here.
Um,
You hear?
it's probably a photo.
Things in a lot, don't you?
There's a delay.
Oh, it was,
I've been kind of sketching this in.
Oh, yes.
And that way we can make sure that that I'm getting it right.
And then we talked in April about, the possibility of having other trust funds come in and talk about their funding sources of supposed to startup. I didn't know how y'all felt about that.
Yeah, well, I think that's directly in our.
Yeah.
So we need to understand.
So we can start thinking about how we might, be, trying to fund our housing.
Yeah, housing trust funds, and I think there's some great questions here, what to use funding for and process for awarding funds. Think about that.
I think, yeah, I can. Actually, there's
You might
someone in
wanna leave.
Winooski that I think Taylor's thought of, it might be a good resource for that. And I'm forgetting their name.
I'm forgetting her name too. I'll try to look it up for you.
Jasmine, maybe? Jasmine? I
Yes,
can't
that's
remember.
correct. Can't remember her last name though.
So I can also reach out to her. Yeah, okay.
Jasmine
Summit
Hurley.
Properties. Okay, has a nonprofit arm called the SEN that provides supportive housing services. Okay, so maybe,
Yeah, they hire someone
okay,
to be like a housing specialist. Which CHT is starting to do some of that too. So if we have these guys come, are we gonna like have them present for the first half of the meeting and then give us time to discuss it?
But I was wondering, or do we want to have May 1st as like a discuss that?
That's gonna put us pretty.
Well, that's true at the home month later. Maybe that's.
I think it's probably a good idea to allow time for discussion,
After.
in the same meeting, just so
Mhm.
that, because, you know, your meetings are a month apart, you're gonna forget, like, by the following meeting, so.
And we wanna be making some sort of, you know, what do we think about what they just said?
Mhm.
Do we wanna look at this thing further? Do we wanna, is this one out of our range? You know,
Yeah,
we should maybe even think about things to read up on before,
yeah,
so that we're all kind of coming with enough understanding.
And then we said that in June, we would probably want to begin looking at the town plan. I can't read my writing, goals and ideas for the town plan.
Yeah, our chapter, the town plan housing chapter draft.
I think I do.
not very well. I mean, really rough. Yeah,
Yeah, we like collect general ideas.
rough ideas.
And you made it sound like it may bounce around different committees in town and the staff's surprised July, so I think at least part of our meeting is working on it a little more.
Yeah,
In August, we might have a draft for, I'm considering request for the town budget or whatever, right, in August.
And then for August, Darren should have all of his data ready to present to us.
That's right, Darren, day to day.
putting you on the spot.
The deadline will keep us on task.
Are you thinking a town budget that we would be requesting, like a set aside
It's a
for
possibility.
housing trust fund?
Yeah, we will have more opinions after
Yeah.
April 3rd when we kind of understand what other towns are doing.
Yeah.
But I think if we have some of these answers, process for awarding funds or how, or what recommendations about what the funding's for, then you have a little more foundation to go to the town and like, say, this is why we would want. I mean, ultimately, it should be a regular budget line item like all that conservation money has. But it's a process to get to that.
Yeah, that's about the latest you can possibly get a budget done.
And then maybe,
We don't get
Start the
budgeted
draft.
for your work, do we?
no. I'm just here.
Included in planning.
Is this part of the
Yeah.
job description?
So when you talk about budget, I mean, you're really talking about for the housing trust fund, like how funding.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So then, do we see from what's up there what we would want to do in May, or do we want to keep that until we've had our February and March discussions and then decide where those take us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or unless we want to put in the conduct outreach with the goal to inform. So this would be engage people and bring in their housing stories and speak with the local businesses.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I think that makes sense in May.
I'm sorry,
So
what'd you
what would you
say?
be doing?
Well, it's the bullet item about conducting outreach with the goal to inform drafting the new town plan. But maybe. Well, so we want to spend some time on that. I don't know if we want to. Try to gather those sort, I mean, you mentioned there's a couple of sources out there, so. I'd be have to kind of pull in what's out there or whatever. I mean, would we come sort of informed and review things about what we would want to pass into this chapter? And maybe interview some local businesses before then and have that go over?
Is that gonna be part of, Darren, are you going to have information that relates to workforce housing? And that's one of the issues that our town is particularly bad at is providing housing for the 25,000 or so people that work here.
So workforce housing is a little bit of a misnomer because housing is housing and it's affordable to whoever can afford it. So I don't think we'll specifically say this is data related to workforce housing. We'll just say this is data related to housing at these income levels. But in terms of, providing housing to meet the needs of our economy and our, our workforce, that's absolutely part and parcel of what we're doing. And it's, really the message at this point is we need more of it in general, because the folks who, in a healthy market, there's enough choice that folks aren't competing with each other and driving up costs. And that's when the workforce housing disappears.
Mhm.
Well, weren't we talking about actually trying to collect people's personal stories if they're willing to share? Because I mean, data, we have lots and lots of data, but especially if we're gonna try to make sure that everybody in town is really on board with what we're trying to do, I think it would be really helpful to have some stories, not just numbers.
Yeah, I would second that, Debbie. It's really when you talk about workforce housing and when you're talking about, making sure that the community is bought into that, that's what matters is those personal stories. I'd encourage you to check out New Hampshire's housing program. I have to look up the name of it, but they've spent a lot of effort really getting some good stories and some good, they have some videos up about, what is workforce housing, what does, housing look like in our community. There's also a website called Communities and Consequences. And it, again, sort of talks about the when we say affordable housing, who are we talking about? Who's living there and what's their actual story? I can share those links with Melinda afterwards to pass on to you folks.
Yeah.
So you wanna spend the May meeting going over things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we should call May first like stories. Now, but the question is, do we want to try to collect them before and have something to review, or do we want to have a strategy that day for getting the stories?
Maybe we just keep that question of what we're gonna use May 1st for and see what we get out of the first 3 months. And if we come up to the end of those three, if we're coming out with more questions that we need to discuss, then we could use it for discussion to finalize some stuff. And if we get more ideas from these things of things that relate to that, then we could develop something for that. Maybe might have
Alright.
to just to have a space.
All right.
to change tracks or something. Get some brilliant idea.
This sort of gives you an idea of really how limited the time is. It does.
Yeah.
So much to do, so little time.
Yeah.
Do you think we need to fill in the rest of it, or, I mean, from then we've kind of gone through a whole cycle and we'll have a lot of knowledge, so. You
Yeah,
may want to kind of set those out later on.
That's what I would think, is that
Yeah.
that somewhere in June, we'll be starting to get enough, actually after the August meeting, when we get Darren's data, we'll really be in a position to decide what directions we really need to go, and we should be able to fill in.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I mean,
think this is pretty good, yeah.
I think this is a good start. Sort of a rough sketch, and this is gonna be a living document, and you're gonna be,
Yeah.
things are gonna change around, but it seems like you've got a good direction, especially for the first several months, and an idea about what you wanna learn about and who you wanna invite in, and I can work on reaching out to folks
Oh,
and,
good.
and I think, you know, obviously availability is gonna play into who actually, what and who gets discussed at the subsequent
We
meeting.
might end up having to switch some things around based on
Oh, yeah.
availability of speakers. Monica, do you have any comments on it?
You're muted.
Sorry, I have a really terrible internet connection. It's kind of like coming in and out, but I think that's a great rough draft of a schedule. I'm looking forward to hearing from a lot of these organizations that have figured out funding for you know, financing building like Summit. I've been to a few of their properties, and I have had great experiences with the folks that work there. You know, I think they'd have a lot of good things to share.
Mm. Great.
Debbie, any comments?
No, I put in my 2 cents before. I think, yeah, it looks good.
The only other thing I'd like to throw out there is about accessory dwelling units. I just wonder if that's like a good early win, like, or if we had some kind of an event about it, or maybe if we got some architects to volunteer their time and would pair them with folks that might consider building an ADU or thinking about it. You know, I've met a lot of people recently that are retired and they're trying to figure out what their next step is gonna be, and there aren't great senior choices around here, but for them, you know, maybe building a caretaker's unit in their house or something might be a good option. So, I mean, I wouldn't argue that for Williston that ADUs are gonna change the game or anything like that, but it is an early win. Like, we could say, we're a housing committee and we got this one thing going, and, you know, 2 people are gonna build ADUs. So at least it's like, gets the conversation going,
Mhm.
right? I mean, a Zephyr Place is a win where you really change things. 1 or 2 ADUs, you haven't transformed things. Or it could be something where we approach these businesses where we say, hey, we would like to really get this conversation going, and would you have an interest in funding one? Or plus there's state funding for ADUs too, so.
So I have a suggestion. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I feel like I'm gonna be an expert by the middle of next year, because I'm working on it at my house, and it's
Awesome.
it's quite a bit more involved than one might think. The town makes it pretty easy, but there are other things you have to jump through for the state, and So but I feel like I'd be happy to, you know, kind of share my experiences and sort of help people. Because yeah, I'm on track to do that at my house, on my property.
Yeah, my septic is sized for 3 bedrooms. If I wanted to add a bedroom, it would be very expensive to put in a new mound system to.
You can decrease the number of bedrooms in your house, so that's
Take the closet out of one and call it an office.
yeah, that's right. That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a great idea. I think one possible starting point, and if you're also talking about collecting stories, might be to collect stories from folks that have done ADUs. And I know that some other towns, or actually it was Jericho, they did this whole promotion of ADUs, and they created like this one web page that provides a whole lot of information about ADUs. So that might be a goal. I would caution you on sort of getting your hands into a whole bunch of stuff at once, but if you're gonna be collecting stories and you want to you know, kind of establish like an ADU promotional program down the road, a first step could be to reach out to those who have done ADUs and ask them if they'd be willing to share their stories, and you know, that'd be a starting point anyway. And I think Debbie would be number one. Number one.
Yeah, Bill Skiff, but it was on a big piece of property.
Mhm. Anyway, that's just a
Not the bottom,
suggestion.
is there an ADU? Didn't know.
Now he's moved out.
Yeah. Wow. So you're saying we could still have some stories around ADUs? I mean, I guess generally, I'm thinking about what is our main communication or changing hearts and
Yeah.
minds, so. We
Where
talked
do
about a
we
lot
use
about,
those?
yeah, into the sort of, this is not a kind word, but into the bureaucracy or part of the system. The state systems and the town systems and getting, getting that argument in, but are we focused on changing hearts and minds here in town, getting some information out to town folks? And you actually mentioned that earlier too, giving them some information that might make them understand some of the challenges.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, they're not insurmountable though. I mean, they're just, if you follow step-by-step process, well, I say that now. I haven't actually achieved the ADU yet, but it looks like, it's doable, but yeah, I mean, it might be good to tell people kind of what to expect but encourage them. I mean, it's one, I don't think we're gonna like save the state from the housing crisis, but just by doing ADUs. But I think it's one more tool in the toolbox, right? So
Mhm.
Where would we be using stories, is what I was wondering.
Well, in that chapter, I think there would be stories, but yeah, I think
In
there's some,
the town plan, is that what you're thinking?
right, but I think there might be some potential to put them on Front Porch Forum or something like that, see where people are agreeable to it, so that.
yeah, or do videos and have them on the website, and or even hold a special event, or have something available at like 4th of July, or some big town gathering where people are coming anyway.
I think the Observer is a good place to tell stories. I think a lot of people read the Observers. And I feel like they want to be really supportive of the town, so they're likely to be willing to cooperate with something like that.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
one other suggestion I'd make to how to sort of use those stories, maybe not directly, but the more they're out there, the more you can reference them when it comes to development projects and planning issues. And I'd encourage you as a committee to be active in that, because a lot of times, the folks who are opposed to projects come out at those meetings, and there's not often many voices in the room in support of housing. So that's definitely absolutely important to get it out in sort of community conversation to build the support there. But sometimes that's where the rubber meets the road, unfortunately.
Right, exactly, just, other voices besides I don't want any more housing in my backyard. So.
Of course, in Williston, our biggest conversation is about chickens, so.
You are not the only town.
That gets people out to the meeting.
That's all we've got to worry about.
Well, I think this is a pretty good start.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like.
Well, we were gonna put you in, like, we're gonna give
Yeah.
you 10 or 15 minutes, right?
That's gonna be good. I guess.
At the January or February meeting.
Why is July the 17th instead of the first?
So a couple of these dates.
The 3rd of
regular
July.
meeting is the 3rd of July, and that's when a lot of people are gonna be watching fireworks.
Okay.
So.
Sure, it makes sense.
And then the following week, I have energy committee at the same time, so,
But which is your priority now? That's gonna
meet at the same time, I mean, they're, connected.
clearly won't be July 3rd will be there.
Yeah, and then the same goes for January, I think it's New Year's Day, that's the first
Yeah.
January date, so I'm pushing it off to mid-January. If that works for folks.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do a joint meeting, Melinda. Save yourself a
Joint-
meeting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they can be a bit unruly though, so. I didn't say that.
The energy committee.
Yeah, anyway,
Well, I think that we're in pretty good shape here for starting off. We've given you an awful lot of work because we're telling you to bring all these people in for, January, February, March, April. And then all the information that your, planning commission is working on the housing chapter.
Right.
For June, July, and then, of course, Darren will have the full meeting to give us all the information in August, so.
I was joking earlier, but I do want to be clarify. I have no clue exactly when all that data will be pulled together and ready. So happy to hold that August meeting, but we'll be in touch about
Okay.
exactly
Yeah.
when it's ready for your consumption.
Right, I mean, as we know in planning offices, these deadlines can shift quite a bit, so we'll just,
Well, I think this is
Keep that in
an
mind.
outline of structure for us to get going with, and
yeah.
then I think it's pretty good. Is there anything else on the agenda for tonight?
Let's just take a little,
I should have printed it out, I'm sorry.
no worries, if I can find it, where is it? Let's see. Okay.
There it is.
Well, this was the list, yeah, here. Oh, the navigation program.
That was, yeah, Darren just spoke about that briefly.
Oh, okay, then that's the data to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the GIS analysis and the partnering with a municipality to identify some sites, specifically the Housing Navigator program.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
So is there anything else that we need to accomplish tonight?
do you have a chair for the next meeting?
What is our vice chair, I think, will be here.
You can wear your birthday crown.
Are you okay with that, Deb, or do you wanna? Hand off sharing responsibilities to an interim person? Oh, you're muted.
You need to push your space bar, Debbie.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind handing it off actually, because my sister's gonna be visiting as well, and that would be nice not to have to.
Chair meeting.
Yeah, yeah, leave her to chair meeting.
So who would be willing to,
I can share.
okay.
Thank you.
Should be a good meeting. And is there any other business for us to conduct tonight? In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any objections? All in favor?
There.
Then the meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me, folks.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I know an Afghani family that